You know, sometimes I'm glad not many people watch these because there's already points made in my first video about She-Hulk which I think are more complicated than I let on, and which I wish I'd approached with more nuance. This isn't any kind of retraction to the previous video or anything, because on some level I do still think that this whole scene is indicative of character flaws on the part of both Hulks, and still feel like it will either be helped or hurt by how the rest of the show addresses it. But I made kind of a big snit about Jennifer, and by extension the writers, being kind of unfair, and I've really come around in the days since to thinking that there's much more to it. Let's just start by playing the clip that has everybody in such a tizzy.
Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you. So all of this just feels like projecting a lot of
language
onto me.
See.
No, I'm doing this.
This is a family channel, Jennifer. Paying attention to the circumstances of this argument and what's actually being said, Jen's frustration with Bruce is 100% understandable from her perspective. Bruce is, in fact, projecting his own problems onto her and trying to mold her into basically a version of himself. And that's not super fair to her.
Whether you like it or not, you're now a superhero.
I can change back and forth, and I'm happy to now get back to my life. I'm not you, and I'm not gonna become you.
Why wouldn't you listen to someone who's been through all this before?
Because we're different people!
Like I mentioned in the previous video, Bruce seems perturbed by the idea that someone could be a Hulk without suffering for it the way he did. Because what that means is that all of said suffering is born of the man's nature and not the Gamma Monster. What Jen is doing here is laying out in plain terms that she doesn't need a syllabus to control her anger, not because she suffered more than Bruce has. I repeat, not because she suffered more than Bruce has, but because her lived experience as a woman has made her demonstrably more adept than Bruce is at managing how she feels. And you know what? For as harshly as she puts it, you can make the strong case that she is objectively, empirically correct about that. Or, at the very least, what we know about both characters suggests that she's correct about being able to manage her anger more often, more successfully than Bruce. Bruce's history with the Hulk is one where Bruce's lack of control, at times even despite his best efforts, has resulted in the literal deaths of innocent people. Jen does not carry that risk, and there's a reason for that. It's not downplaying Bruce's experiences or pain to suggest that Jen manages her anger more / better than he does. Hey, knock it off. Okay, you and interrupting these videos, I swear. Even if it's a little bit insensitive of her to say it to his face, evidence suggests that she's just right. It's also unfortunate that the internet's reaction to Jen's speech basically proves her more right than that. Jen really can't even lash out in anger at her own cousin for a split second without the internet calling for her head. If she faces anything even fractionally similar to the internet outrage in her own life, which obviously she does, then no duh she has a metric ton of experience with controlling her anger. The real reason I wanted to come back to this scene is that it's really the point on which the whole episode turns, and I think any given person's experience with the rest of this show is going to come down to how they leave this interaction, and which of the two characters they ultimately think is more in the wrong. That is, if they're able to pick one at all. But if I'm going to keep making videos about this show and encouraging people to engage with those videos, I think it matters that I lay out how my understanding of this moment and what it means for these characters has changed. My current feeling is that though Jen is somewhat tunnel-visioned and insensitive toward Bruce's feelings, and both characters are definitely going to have to undergo a change before they can reconcile what seems to be a much deeper schism in their relationship that this conflict stems from, I ultimately empathize more with her than I do Bruce in this moment. The point she's really trying to hammer into Bruce's head is that she's not him, and that being a Hulk doesn't magically mean that she shares his wants or his struggles, and Bruce is being quite stubborn, controlling, and tunnel-visioned himself. Not to mention, he's definitely keeping Jen around just as much to assuage his own loneliness as he is for her own sake. The big, meaningful question for me, and the one I think everyone who's frustrated with this scene should be asking themselves, is do I understand both of these characters and why they're behaving this way towards each other? And the answer, for me, is yes. And hopefully, if you didn't already, this video helped you empathize with both a little bit more. But hey, like always, let me know what you think in the comments, like, subscribe if you haven't already, share this video around, etc., etc., and I'll see you in the future.